the same since the night we went up in flames. 3 years felt like happiness to me. I had finally found my feet. 3 words came so easily when it was you and me. Never felt better, thoughts of leaving never. Then you showed up with a box of my sweaters, right when I was thinking forever. 3 months later you...
Okay, let's get going. Welcome from my side, and especially after we've missed you since last Friday was a public holiday. I hope that you could have a good long weekend, and welcome again back to our fun-filled Friday evenings, afternoons at least. Well, it sometimes feels like the evening, but it's not quite evening yet. Thank you to those of you that join us on time and even early. I appreciate that. And we are really drawing to the last bits of the module, so it's great that you are here. And at the end of the session, I will have some final thoughts on the reflective essay activity. So if I can please ask you, do not start typing questions about it in the chat. Let's just first get through this lesson, and then we will discuss the reflective essay. Okay, so today we're looking at Unit 7, specifically the teacher as learning mediator, and we want you to unveil your own teaching philosophy at the end of this unit. So Benjamin Franklin said, "Tell me and I forget, teach me and I remember, involve me and I learn." So you can already think to yourself, if you were in a class and the teacher was just standing in front reading off the textbook, whether you actually learned versus when you were engaged in that content with the teacher. So the unit outcomes, as I mentioned to you, I always make you aware of this, but please make sure that you specifically take the unit outcomes and turn them into questions, and then that would guide your preparation for the exam time. So we always have the unit outcomes set to you in bullet form, so it's quite easy to follow. So today we will start off with a Mentimeter, and I will also do just a few short notes on some of the theories that we are working through in this unit. But before we get going, I want to just start with a Mentimeter and want to ask you to scan the QR code, and I will load the Mentimeter as well. Let me get that going. And we want to know, in one word, what does a great teacher do? So let me start the presentation. I see some have already joined, and there we go. You should see it on the screen now as well. So learn, support. Let's see how it goes. In one word, what does a teacher do? If you can't scan the QR code, you're welcome to go to menti.com and just type in the Menti code or number that they ask you. So it's 7939 7663. I will also put it in the chat. Menti.com, and it's 7939 7663. Okay, so hopefully by now you will know that you can expect some other activity, so thank you for those that are so fast to respond. Okay, so let's see. One word, what does a great teacher do? They guide, they support, they facilitate. Not quite sure what 93BSS P5J is, but we will let that one go. Facilitate, listen, adaptive. So maybe the teacher is adaptive, but they can't do adaptive, so just bear that in mind. They inspire. Yes, that's something that you can do. Empathize, listen, support, motivate. So I can see that there's definitely a trend in terms of guide, support, motivate that's popping up quite a lot. What do we see? Respect, yeah, that's also true. Influence. Okay, I'm going to just wait till we get up to 100 responses. Okay, so a great teacher might be a mentor, but what do they do if they are a mentor? That's the question. Listens, teach. Okay, of course they teach. That's what they get paid for. But in their teaching, how do they actually engage with the learners? Okay, we're over 100 responses, so let's move on. We will have a Menti running later as well, so for now you can just stop voting there. So what do I think makes a great teacher? So there's an intentional intervention in the learning process. So it's not just a matter of like throwing, walking into the class and throwing caution to the wind and whatever the learners must learn must just happen. You are intentional with what you want to do. So before I started this lesson today, I prepared for the lesson and I intentionally put certain activities in place and certain content on my slides so that we could have a good learning process. Builds thinking skills, not just knowledge transfer. So if you have a teacher that just reads off the textbook, then there's no skills really involved and the learners aren't actually thinking at all. It's just the teacher that's doing the thinking. um, Creates independent lifelong learners and reflects on practice and adapts continuously. Now I have to just say that after we had the session of the teacher as a reflective practitioner, I definitely saw that a lot of you mentioned that you do realize that as a teacher you have to reflect throughout. So that's really great. But what we want to do is we want to move away from the teacher just being this like person that dumps the knowledge on the learners and the learners just passively sit and listen. We want the teacher to actually become a mediator of learning. So learning mediator acts as a bridge between the information and the student or the learner, empowering them to actively participate in the learning process and become successful learners. So, emphasis being empowering them to actively participate in the learning process. So, for me, if I just started, let's say, with this slide, I didn't give you the Mentimeter. I just started reading off this slide. Then you're just sitting passively, but at least with a Mentimeter, my hope was to get you to think on this topic. So at least involve you in certain aspects. So what's the benefits of a learning mediator? So it increases student engagement. There's a deeper understanding. It develops some skills, as we mentioned, fosters self-directed learning, and creates a more positive and inclusive learning environment. So there's obviously some core responsibilities of a learning mediator, and I'm not going to read everything. This is just an introduction. We're going to get to another Mentimeter quite soon, and there will be a class activity. So the responsibilities of a learning mediator is that you have to understand diverse needs. So especially if you think a lot of you on the word cloud mentioned that a good teacher supports. So if you understand the diverse needs of your learners, you will support your learners, create a positive learning environment. Now, maybe it's not such a big deal, but for me, just starting the class with some nice music that's upbeat, hopefully let you know that I'm in a good mood and we're ready for this class and we want high energy in the class. And so, you have to do that as a teacher. If you're having a bad day, doesn't matter at all. Your learners cannot sense that. You have to give them your best every day. That's part of the profession. You also have to facilitate learning activities, and again, we see promote critical thinking and self directed learning. Now, where we are actually the main core of today is to speak about the teaching philosophy. So, your teaching philosophy is a personal statement that outlines your values, beliefs, and approach to education. So, if you think you guys are actually in a very good position in the fact that you have three lecturers doing this one module, and I know some of the students actually mentioned that it could be a challenge because we are so different. But the reason we are so different is because we each have a different teaching philosophy. So my teaching philosophy differs from Prof. Lautenbach's teaching philosophy, and then the same for Prof. van der Westhuizen. And there's definitely not a right or a wrong, there's just a difference between the three. So, and of course, who you are as a person will definitely affect your teaching philosophy, but also your view of education and what your goal is. At the end of the day, if I have my classes on a Friday, my main goal for a Friday afternoon is that you would be engaged and that you would walk away feeling that you didn't just sit and listen to me. And that's my approach. That's how I feel we have had a successful class. So that is all dependent on my teaching philosophy. So it answers the fundamental question, why do I teach the way I do? And that's why you will notice that I teach different to other lecturers. Your philosophy guides the curriculum choices and lesson planning, your pedagogy and teaching strategies, your assessment decisions, and how you build relationships with learners. So that's all influenced by your teaching philosophy. Now, of course, if we're talking about teaching philosophy, we can look at great educational philosophers. So we had Confucius, Socrates, Montessori. A lot of you might have heard of the Montessori schools. For instance, Montessori's teaching philosophy was very self directed. So, saying that learners shouldn't have a prescribed curriculum. They need to, engage with their learning environment and learn at a pace that's good for them, things that they want to learn. So, of course, then that would, spill over into how the schools would be operating. Then, of course, we have John Dewey and Paulo Freire, Vygotsky, Ken Robinson. You might have seen some of his nice TED Talk videos. Sugata Mitra, he had the thing, and this is one of my TED Talks that I really love, is the hole in the wall experiment. And I really would love for you to go and watch that video. It's not a long story, but it's really an inspiration on how you can make a small little change in a rural area and you can really have a big impact. And then, of course, I think a lot of you have used Khan Academy, especially if you have maths or science or any subject that could be quite difficult. Khan Academy often comes to the rescue. Okay, so if you're building your teaching philosophy, you have to do some self reflection. You have to consider the fact that there are different viewpoints, and then, of course, living your philosophy. And if you do some self-reflection, you have to examine your own positive and negative learning experiences as a student, because what we often see is the positive experiences we had influence then what we consider to be a positive experience for our learners. So, for instance, one of my main mentors in my educational experience never taught a lesson. So she would always just have us work in class, and then, of course, she would consolidate and bring in some theory, but it was never a lecture from start to finish with a whole, like PowerPoint slideshow, etc. And that's something that was really positive to me. I experienced the learning gains, and that's why it really shaped how I now teach as a lecturer. Then you have to consider different viewpoints, draw from philosophical and theoretical traditions. Just because you like one way doesn't mean that that's necessarily the right way. You also have to consider the context and then living your philosophy. So it has to be authentic, it has to be consistent, and you have to have a growth mindset, meaning that you can't just be stuck in your ways and think, well, this is how I am, this is how I taught 10 years ago, and this is how I'll teach 10 years from now. You have to also consider, how can I get better? Okay, and I'm really getting, like, now I'm almost done because I'm talking way more than what I ever want to talk in a lesson. But I do realize that this is just some theory that I want you just to have the basis before we get to the class activity. So there are 5 major educational philosophies that shape how we teach and learn. Okay, so for now, these are often considered big words because they all have these isms, what we call isms, but it's really good for you to know the different educational philosophies. There's way more than this, but these are like the major main ones that you can look at. And if you look at the educational philosophy, you'll often then see how it shapes your teaching philosophy. So if we look at my teaching philosophy, for instance, and we look at behaviorism. Now, behaviorism says learning is shaped through stimulus response and reinforcement. So that means I just stimulate something and I expect you to have a certain response. I know Prof. van der Westhuizen mentioned this. It was the experiment where you, I think it was Pavlov, had a little bell and he would give his dog food. And then, so obviously, because of the food coming, the dog would salivate. And eventually, with the bell, the dog will automatically salivate, even though there wasn't any food. And some people think learning is still like that. If I come into the class and there's some reward, so I say, if you know your 3 times table off by heart, I will give you a sweetie. Then the kids just memorize it and the learners get the sweetie, and that's now we say now learning happened because they actually had the same response, because the stimulus, the little sweetie, um, you know, caused that response. But if you think about it, it's really not necessarily that learning took place. It was actually just a very primitive response to a specific stimulus, which is, I mean, based on experiments with a dog. So you have to think about that. So if you think of my teaching philosophy, that's obviously not influenced by behaviorism. But if you look at social reconstructivism, education as a tool for social transformation and justice, then you can see, okay, I always have an element in my classes of some social learning. And if you look at constructivism, learners construct their own knowledge through experience and reflection. And if you think how many times I give you an activity to do, or I ask you to, give me some of your viewpoints on a Mentimeter, then you could easily see that my teaching philosophy is most probably influenced mostly by constructivism or social reconstructivism, because I believe I need to also create good citizens that walk out of my class that contribute to society in its whole. So you need to be able to work together with other people, and I can create a space in my class to stimulate that. All right. Okay, so we've got a few Mentimeter activities today. So you can go back to the normal one that we just started now with the word cloud, and I'm going to have another slide come up. So in one word, describe the role of a traditional teacher. How, if you think of a traditional teacher, what were they like? And what did they do? So if I had to, yes, perfect, instruct. Spiritual growth, okay. Mother, guider, oral educator, guider. Were they guiders? Did traditional teachers guide or did they instruct? That's a question for you. Instructor, suppressive. Okay, punishers, yes. Because remember, traditionally, teachers believed in behaviorism. So just as much as you could have a positive stimulus, like a sweetie, you could also have a negative stimulus, which would be like punishment, like corporal punishment. So if you don't know your 3 times table, I'm going to give you in hiding. So then out of fear, like they memorize the times table, but it's not learning, it's just a fear response. Strict, yes. Punisher, okay, Punisher definitely comes up quite a bit. Understanding, okay, maybe. Control, dictators, um, lead, educate, strict, assessor, supporter, mother. Not sure if you, but maybe that was the traditional teachers that you had, so that's good. Okay, now what I want you to do is describe in one word a learning mediator. So now, do you remember I said the mediator takes the knowledge, there's certain knowledge and content that I need you to learn in this module, and I need to be the bridge between your learning and the content. So that's a mediator then. So what is a learning mediator? What role do they have? Guider, implementer, motivator, teaching leader, transfer knowledge is, remember, then you're not a mediator, then you dump the knowledge, you transfer, you think I have the knowledge and I'm just going to miraculously transfer it into your brain. So I'm not the bridge, I'm the, like, more like a dump, like I dump it in your brain. So do you think of it like that? Facilitator, yes. Simplifier, yes, of course, because sometimes, the content is difficult to understand. Mentor, student centered. Thank you for whoever said that. Let's give it another few more minutes. Okay, now this is now where we start really delving into the teaching philosophy statement. So complete the sentence. I want to be a teacher because. Just remember, because we said your reason for teaching will influence your teaching philosophy. So I want to be a teacher because it is my passion. That's a really great thing. That's a really great answer. I have a passion for it. Okay. And what we're going to do is I'm going to, once we have a few responses, I'm going to open up voting, and we're actually going to vote which answers we think are quite good. Okay, so it's a good profession for me, professional, but it's profession for me. I believe in sharing knowledge. I love kids. I love teaching with all my life. I'm so glad. I hope my kids one day will be taught by you. Um, I want to reform my society. So if I read, I want to reform my society, I immediately know that that person is most probably influenced by the social reconstructivist approach, Paulo Freire. That's the educational philosophy driving your teaching philosophy if you want to reform society. I'm passionate about it. I want money. It is a job, but I can tell you, if you just do teaching for the salary, it's going to drive you mad. You really have to have some sort of passion for it. Otherwise, you're going to hate it, and it's going to hate you. It's not an easy job just to do for money. I can tell you that. I want to transform individuals. I want to be a teacher because I believe in change. Well done. I believe it's my passion. I'm inspired to educate the future generation. I want to develop education systems. So maybe there's a road to the DBE for you. Who knows? Okay, so let me open the voting. Now you should be able to vote. 2 people have voted. 3 people have voted. Okay, we'll see now what the votes reveal. I will let us go up to about 110 votes, and then I will finish the voting. Okay, let's finish. Okay, so 16 people voted that it is my passion. 11 said I want to make a change. Okay, so the 16 and these 10 can actually be put together. They're about 26 then. I want to shape minds. 9 people voted for that. So you can be proud of yourself if this is your topic, right? Or your statement. I want to help young ones to pursue their dreams. I want to be a teacher because I want to give learners worthwhile knowledge. Okay, let's just give a little bit more. I want to make a positive change for my learners and prepare them for their futures. I believe I know how to facilitate knowledge. Great, so you believe in your skill. That's great. And 4 people liked it, so they voted for that. Okay, so as you can see, even in our votes, we differed in what we think is most important. Some people obviously feel you put the most value on that teaching should be your passion. Other people, if you were voting that you want to drive change or you want to shape minds, you obviously view teaching in a different way. So it's different perspectives. Okay, so let's see. So the elements of a teaching philosophy statement, and this is where we're getting at now. So soon, as I go through these last few slides, you're going to have an opportunity to write your own teaching philosophy statement. So I want to ask that you please listen up. And just to know, this will be a class activity, so it will close by the end of this class. Okay, so the teaching philosophy statement will have elements of your beliefs. So, what do you think? Strategies, what do you do? Impact, what has been the impact? And goals, how will you improve? Okay, so your beliefs about learners. So, if you're writing your statement, you're going to have to write, this is how I view, this is what my beliefs are about learners. So, what do you believe about how learners learn best? What are their diverse needs? What role does prior knowledge and experience play in new learning? And how can you create an inclusive and equitable learning environment? So, you have to ask yourself, do I believe all learners can succeed or only some? Because maybe you think, if you think only some learners can succeed, then your teaching is going to look much different. Your statement's going to look different. Do I see mistakes as failures or as part of the learning process? And do I build relationships with learners or just deliver content? Okay. Then the teaching methods, your pedagogy or how you teach, and you'll hear the word pedagogy a lot of times still in your studies, must align with your philosophy, so and what you believe. So you have to say what pedagogical approaches resonate with you. Is it inquiry based, collaborative, direct instruction? How do you plan to actively engage learners in the learning process? What role does technology play in your teaching? And how will you assess learning in a meaningful or authentic way? Then, if you think of the ideal classroom, so what impact can you have? How will you foster respect, collaboration, and critical thinking? What is your role? The one who talks or the one who facilitates? That will depend also, and that will also have to come out of your teaching philosophy. And how will learners feel safe to take risks and make mistakes? And then, how will you ensure that you improve and how will you stay a lifelong self directed learner? So, if we just go up again to these elements, your teaching philosophy statement will say, this is what I believe about education. And most probably, you will quote some or other theory like constructivism or hopefully not, but behaviorism if you believe in like you're just going to have a sweetie and you're going to have punishment. But I can tell you that's very outdated, so hopefully not. Then what strategies? So what teaching strategies will often be seen in your classes? What impact, so how will the classroom look? How will you create a good environment and develop your learners? And how will you improve yourself, so your professional development? How will you make sure that you don't teach the same way you taught 10 years ago and keep on teaching that same way over and over and over again? Okay, so what I want to ask is, for now, on Moodle, on Ulink, or whatever you want to call it, I created an assignment tab under module assessments. Let me quickly see if I can just show you. Let me bring it up here. So if you go to module assessments, I think I set it to open at 4 o'clock. If you scroll down, you will see crafting a personal teaching statement. Okay, and if I view this as a student, add submission, then use the sentences provided on the PowerPoint, which I also gave you here, and complete each sentence for your specific teaching statement. So use these sentence stems as a starting point. So you can just write it here. So if I were you, I would highlight, copy, and paste it here. Oh, you have to use the shortcut Control V, and then you're going to fill in the sentence. I believe learning happens when, and then you complete the sentence. My role as a learning mediator is, and you complete the sentence. And so you go on, and you need to make sure you submit. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to finish off the class, and then I will give you time to still complete this. This activity will close at 5. I set it to close at 5 because the class finishes at 5. Okay, so you are warned, and if you have any friends that are not in the class currently, please make sure that they are aware that there's a class activity. So let's do some class attendance, and then I'm going to get to the questions for the assignment, and then you are free to go. So let's do the class attendance quickly. And I do want to warn you that I could be running another class attendance after this one. So don't think you can just leave as soon as you're done. The class is finished when I dismiss it and say, okay, we are done. You can now go and work further. So okay, here we go. You have the code. I will put it in the chat as well. So just to say, we are done with the Mentimeter, so you don't have to write your responses there. And for the responses on the questions, that's the class activity loaded under module assessments. So you will find them under module assessments, and you have to complete that by 5 o'clock this afternoon. But I'm just doing the class attendance quickly. Let me play some music while we wait.
Came crawling back to me. No, you were just lonely, but I still like it when you hold me up in flames. We burned it all away. Up in flames. Nothing
just going to give one more minute. And I don't know what you are referring to when you say I can find where we are supposed to respond. I'm not sure what you are referring to. So you don't have to respond to anything now. You have to do the class attendance.
Baby, I don't care about the way you're holding. Maybe I can share a piece of it tonight. We could let our hearts drift into the open, so you'll never lose your faith in light. No, I can't erase the pain you carry, but I know tomorrow's less heavy. We could let our hearts drift into the open, so you'll never lose your faith in light. Baby, I don't mind the storms you're under. I'll be the fire when your night gets colder. Even if we
Okay, I think that's enough time. So let me just get the music off. Okay. So, yes, I also like that song. It's nice and upbeat. And what I want to just say is, so number one, all assessments ever done in this module are under module assessments. So you shouldn't have to ask where they are or why you can't see them. That is quite clear. Then, with regard to the reflective essay assignment, I want to emphasize, highlight, put neon lights around it. We cannot, we really, as three lecturers, cannot ask you to send us queries on your assignments. That is why we have put a lot of money towards employing tutors, so that you at least have a smaller group that you can engage with. So what I want to ask is, if you have any query regarding your um, reflective essay, please send it to your tutors. I have appointments with the tutors where they are going to send me the queries and I will deal with them and we will then get back to you. But sending me an email, and if you can just, I really want to ask if you can just for a moment imagine you are 670 students. So if 10% of you send me an email, which is not even a lot, 10%, that's already 67 emails that I have to go through. So I do want you to respect our process that we mentioned right in the beginning of this module. We have a tutor for you, and the tutor is a senior tutor, and then I am the module coordinator. So make sure that you send all your queries to your tutor. That being said, you need to remember that I mentioned that there were two submission links, and we would only mark the second submission link if you have submitted, even if you submitted on both. So if you submitted on the second submission link, you need to make sure you find your mark there. So that will be the resubmission link on the module assessments. If you didn't submit on the second one, then it's going to say that you still have assignments outstanding, because it thinks, remember the system is stupid, it thinks that you needed to submit something there, but now you didn't, because you didn't have to. If you submitted on the first initial assignment link, and that is your mark, then that's fine. Then you know that's fine, it works, you've got your mark, then don't stress about the resubmission link. Okay, so do know that once we consolidate the marks list, we won't penalize you. You will not be disadvantaged. Your mark will be captured properly. Okay. Then I do want to also just mention that the three lecturers of this module hand marked each assignment. So I do want to state, if you are querying your marks, please note that it was marked by us, the lecturers. It's not marked by the tutors. So you will really have to be quite convincing to query a mark. That being said, if you do think that something is not right with your mark, it's your responsibility then to look at your rubric, look at the feedback, and then make a case and say, yeah, you said that I am using emerging, or you gave me an emerging academic writing score. And I actually think my academic writing was good because I used references, my referencing was fine, and I didn't use AI. I declared my AI, whatever. So all of that you put on an email to your tutor. The tutor will add it to the list, and I will deal with all the queries at once when we've compiled all the queries. Okay. So I am not against anyone querying their marks. That's fine. But you need to then make a good case of why you don't think that you deserve the mark that you got. And it can't just be because, ma'am, can you look at my assignment again? You need to say, you gave me this, but I did this and this and this. And that's why I believe that I was supposed to only rather get this on the rubric. I also want to ask, just in that line of thought, if you used AI and you didn't declare it properly, like most of you didn't, because a lot of you said you only used it for grammar, but if we looked at it carefully, it wasn't the case. You didn't just use it for grammar, and we were lenient because this was your first big assignment. But if you're querying and we realize, but you actually used AI, but we were just lenient and you were supposed to actually get 0, but you ended up getting maybe 60. Be quite clear before you query if you really want to go down that route. Because if we do have to scrutinize the feedback and the assignment, we will have to scrutinize it on all aspects. So I am not, it's not a threat, it's just a absolute, please be careful, and let's just be fair. If you are asking us to look at your marks again, we will, but just be clear that you want us to really look at it. Some students submitted late and we didn't even penalize you for that, so we were very nice. Some students, your reference lists were really extremely poor, and you were supposed to actually get 0 because you didn't reference as we asked. Some students, you didn't have a declaration, and we were lenient on that. So from my view, and I looked at all the marks, I really think that we were quite lenient with some of the marks. So I think just do bear that in mind. Okay. So let me look at some of the questions. So class activity, we have to complete look at module assessments. Can I access the class to start the assignment? No, it's fine. We're still busy with the class and there will be time. Can you please show us again how to do your task? You just go into module assessments, scroll right down, it's right at the bottom. Go in there, there's a little text box. You just type your answers in the text box. What happens if you ask for remark and the marks come back lower? No, if you take the remark and the marks come back lower, then the lower mark is the one that we will accept. That's university policy right through. It's even the case if you do a master study. Maybe some of you want to do a master study. If you get a mark and you send it to a third examiner, that third examiner's mark is final, even if it's a fail, and you thought maybe they're going to give you a distinction. So it's a serious matter. You have to realize that it is a serious matter. Okay, where's the activity that was answered? What is the word length for the assignment? No, I said you must just complete those questions. So there's no word length, just complete the questions. Okay? If you didn't receive your mark, you need to please just send an email to your tutor and they will compile the list of the queries and I will look at that. So do know that we will look at it. How many words must the class activity? I answered that. And okay, again, Andiswa, please make sure you reach out to your tutor. Is there any form of assessment or test to be written before the exam? Yes, you will still be writing a test. And um, what are we writing on this activity? If you don't know, then you weren't in class. How do we calculate our semester mark? I put let me show you, under module assessments, you will see there is a breakdown of the percentages. So how it works is, your formal test you wrote, that was your large class test you wrote, that counts 20% of your module, your semester mark. Then these prep class quiz 1, 2, 3, and 4, that's a combination of class quizzes and prep quizzes, etc. So for prep class quiz 1, I put a whole lot of prep quizzes that you did and the class quiz together to give you a mark. Okay, and that counts 5%. That counts 5%. So don't think it's only for unit 1 or unit 2. You can see there's only 4. So it's a combination of unit prep quizzes, class activities, and class quizzes that I combine to give you these marks. Okay, then you will have another quiz on unit 7 and 8 that's coming up soon. That will also count 20%, and your reflective essay, the one that we just released, counts 40% of your semester mark. Okay, and that is also why we made sure that we marked it. And I know some of you said that it took long to get your marks, but I do want to just remind you that we are 3 lecturers, 670 students, and we had to moderate it as well. So please do bear that in mind. You were getting all of these quizzes, you get like immediate feedback. So yeah, I think it's just fair that this would have taken a bit longer. Okay, I just entered, please assist. I'm sorry if you entered 4:15, and the class starts at 3:30, so unfortunately we can't help. So, yes, exam will be on campus, but it will be written on the computer, so it will be in the computer lab. That all of that is communicated on the exam timetable, and I know the tutors have communicated this to you. When are we writing the test? I will communicate that with you soon. Where do we find the questions? Because I only see the submission link. Just click add submission. So Martha, Precious, if you click add submission, the the questions will be there. I didn't say anything about the word count. You just answer those 4 questions. Not long stories, so no word count specifically, but just answer those 4 questions. Do we have a test before the exam? Yes. Can anyone please tell us the word count? I'm not going to comment. Will the test be online? I answered that. Okay, so with that being said, I think we are done, and I will
Dr.
now.
Bailey, can I just say those who so enthusiastically want the word count, I know they want to put it into AI model and say, write me this in so many words, and then it does exactly that. So you decide how many words is necessary for you to properly answer the question. So let us see about that. But no, it's not necessary to always give you word counts. It's recently after AI introduction post 2022, students on a very frequent basis want to know the word count because we know why. But if that was not the case, so don't worry about the word count. Just answer the questions.
Yes, definitely. So the attendance register has been signed. Unfortunately, it seems you missed it. And I hope, Samkelo, you can understand that if I cannot just expect that it should be open for too long, because then students will unfortunately just come in for the register and then pop out again. So we have to be fair to the students that actually go through a lot of effort to be here, to go through the whole class. And for me, that's actually preparing the class and delivering the class and trying to support you and doing the Mentimeters, etc. So we have to respect the whole process. Okay, so you now have another 40 minutes before the class assignment closes. Just because I'm feeling very nice, I want to show you again. You are under module assessments, go to crafting personal teaching statement, and you click on add submission, and there you will say only those 4 questions. You can just type them in this online text and then you submit it. Okay, so that is it. Thank you, Prof. Lautenbach. I see that you're off. Enjoy your weekend. Good luck to all the students to complete your class activity, and we will see you next week again. Have a great weekend.